Welcome to the Q Podcast.
Q is about conversation.
If we're really concerned about ending poverty, we've got to be more concerned about creating justice.
Our cultural products as Christians need to both defy and resonate with the culture.
But God's doing amazing things. His church is expanding. His church is growing.
It's not what's the purpose of my life, it's what is the purpose that's been assigned.
Stay curious, think well, advance good. This is Q.
Well, JP, it is great to get to have this conversation with you, and so excited about the work you guys are doing and more people hearing about it.
Yeah, Gabe, excited to be here with you. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thanks for being a part of Q this year. I mean, what an incredible time that was, right? To just, have to create this virtual event, and you were one of the people who came to our location and was able to be a part of that broadcast as we talked about this idea of overcoming polarization in our cities. And I don't think either one of us could have imagined we would be in the place we are this week and the relevance of that topic, right?
Oh, amen to that. It has been a real challenging time as you look across the country, and I think there's never been a more important time for us to really invest deeply in relationships with each other.
And this is why talking with you this week, I think, is so helpful, even though a lot of the focus of the networks you've been building in Jacksonville and now other cities are doing. But there's been a movement for years of faith leaders, city leaders, people partnering together to try to solve problems. And I think this, to me, is part of the vision of the Q community, is that we want to help inspire that. We want to help educate and mobilize people to come together, work together for the common good, for the good of everybody, whether you're a Christian or not a Christian. And it's in weeks like this where we see how much, certain cities are going through just awful times. And the cities who can walk through this well are the ones where there's probably relationship in place between the city's police departments, the mayor, church leaders, the faith community. And that's a lot of what I see you've been doing in your work, is you've been trying to help bring people together, find common cause, and then start to work on solving problems together. And in your experience, just take us to the backstory, JP, of just how did this even start for you to begin this and to begin this organization to do this?
Yeah, Gabe, it started, I came to Washington like a lot of folks thinking that the best way to fix the country was to think and work in public policy. And it just became so clear over the years that so many of the greatest challenges are happening really close to home, frequently in the home. And I had, about 12 years ago, in my own family, my sister's family failed, and she was in a pretty bad spot. She asked my wife and I to take in her 4 kids, and we did so. They were 10, 11, 14, and 15, and our kiddos were really young at the time, and I really saw what happens when kids lose a mom, lose a dad on a daily basis, and the hurt that comes from it. So between those two things on a personal and a professional level, decided, I felt God stirring in my heart to use a lot of the things I had learned in the public policy world, but to work and serve the church and to pour into relationships and strengthen families.
Yeah, so marriage has become a central focus on your project and the initial project you did in Jacksonville, where it became a pilot that now so many leaders around the country are looking at and going, "This is amazing. How did you accomplish this?" I want to get into what you've accomplished first. I want people to hear the results. What did you see happen through this network of faith leaders and city leaders working together? What did you see happen to marriages in your city?
Yeah, we saw more than 50 churches get together and really serve not only their membership, but their whole community. The divorce rate across Duval County dropped 24% in 3 years.
Wow.
We had actually, through those churches, helped those churches move 58,912 people through 4-hour or longer couples relationship education. And then we supported those churches in delivering over 28 million digital impressions of invitation and encouragement to folks who were at risk in the community.
Wow. Did you say 58,000 went through the training?
58,912 went through 4 hours or longer couples relationship education. It's really an amazing number.
Well, here's what I mean. When we're talking about marriage, I know for sometimes we talk about so many different issues around Q, current issues, things that seem to be brimming at the top. And this week, of course, is no different because racism and the topics of white supremacy or over-policing and so many different, our criminal justice system, there's so many topics we tend to talk about. Marriage is one of those that feels like more of a soft topic, It's one of those topics that's kind of like, you're never going to see it in the news. Tonight you turn on the news, you're not going to hear about a divorce that took place. And yet when you look at our social institutions and you look at how God created culture and how he created this institution as the first institution, right? Marriage. That this would be the building blocks. This would be the foundation for how we would actually live a flourishing life, how we would actually end up having families and children and a heritage. That's why we're talking about marriage, because it's never going to be the front line, headline of the news, but it's so critical. And the fact that you took so many families and couples through training, what I love about this, Rebecca and I, when we adopted our daughter, Joy, we were, through the adoption program, one of the requirements was that we go through, I think it was 12 hours of training where we had to learn how to be good parents. And I remember Rebecca and I, we have 3 teenagers at this point. This is the first time we've gone through a training, and we're both looking at each other like, why did they not require us to have this training before we had our first child? Like we've learned so much, and there's so much to be gained from like these insights. And so I know in your 4-hour trainings, that's what you're doing. You're giving people it can feel like basics, but most people just get married. They might have a premarital counseling session or two, or a pastor who kind of, gives them a few advice early on. But revisiting that in a marriage can be crucial to actually keeping marriages alive. Is that what you guys are finding?
Absolutely. The research shows that an 8-hour dose of relationship education, skills-based relationship education, leads to significant improvements in relationship quality. And for a lot of couples and a lot of people think that success in a relationship, happiness in a relationship is just a matter of chance or a matter of fate. But the reality is the skills necessary to have a great relationship are known, are knowable, they're learnable. And there's ways that churches can actually teach those skills through ministry.
Yeah, it's not all about emotion. It's not always about feeling a certain way. It's about having practices, disciplines, tools, and ways in which you approach conflict. So one of the things I love about you, JP, and we this is a big part of how we try to approach everything at Q, is it's very data-driven. I mean, you've looked at the data, you understand the data, and that's driven you towards some of the solutions that you're creating. Can you tell us a little bit about why you rely so heavily on data, why that's been so important?
Yeah, I came also from the private sector, worked for a company that was really focused on results, and intent was nice, but results were what mattered, like a lot of businesses. And there we used data heavily. I had in my life in public policy had seen the use of digital marketing, particularly micro-targeting for understanding audiences, and all of that really influenced me to say, well, why in ministry are we not as results and data driven? Why shouldn't these great 21st century tools be leveraged and utilized by the church to give glory to God? So back in 2015, when we were developing this initiative, we were the first to begin using and applying data, pretty big data around micro-targeting into ministry, so that you can go into a community and provide healing and help to those who most need it right around the church's campus.
I know you've learned a ton in all of your experience, and then you launched this in Jacksonville. You bring all these churches together. You guys do this campaign. You see the divorce rate drop by 24% in your city, right? Is that?
Yeah.
What was it like for those churches to see the power of doing something together, the power of unity, the power of saying, hey, let's work together and solve this problem? Because doesn't that start to create some confidence that what else could we solve together if we started networking and leaning into one another?
It definitely fired up pastors in the county. And interestingly, we didn't totally begin the project by inviting pastors to be part of a larger coalition. We began the initiative to directly serve each individual pastor in each individual church in their own capacity. And what that ended up doing for us was once they started serving their people well and seeing change, then we started to let them know, you know what, there's a lot of churches doing this. And we would start to pull together meetings of pastors and to do lessons learned and share what they were learning. And it just, there was a heck of a lot of excitement that started to build from those conversations. And seeing the momentum, seeing the divorce rate drop 17% after the first 12 months of full distribution, and then dropping and getting to 28% decline at the end of the second full year of distribution. So it definitely created a win psychology in the county.
Yeah, and so now since that story happened in Jacksonville, now more and more cities, of course, have said, hey, we're interested in applying what you've been doing in your city. So talk a little bit about what you've been doing since that story developed in Jacksonville. And we have many leaders on this podcast and in this community who are leading in their cities. And some of them are pastors. Many of them are just leaders who really care about impacting their community. And I want you to tell them more too, not only what you've been up to, but the ways in which now you're trying to connect with other cities so that they can start to learn more and get involved.
Yeah, so we distilled a replicable framework out of our work in Jacksonville. A lot of lessons learned you mentioned. We call it a data-informed full circle relationship ministry. And the idea is to use relationship ministry as the front porch for the church into the community, to invite folks in. We realized that churches were really effective at finding the unchurched when they could really speak to a felt need. And so now we've started new city-wide initiatives with that model in Billings, Montana, Yellowstone County, and the Permian Basin, Midland and Odessa. And we have the two largest city-wide initiatives that we've just gotten underway. Fort Worth, and some of the largest churches in Fort Worth are now participating. And then the newest one is in the Mile High City in Denver, Colorado. And so there, if anybody who's listening to this is from one of those cities, there's philanthropists have sponsored and are providing resources to churches to do real outreach and evangelization into their communities around strengthening relationships. So I'd encourage you to get in touch with us. And then we're also working with individual churches, Gabe, coast to coast. We've got individual large church partners like LCBC, which is the largest evangelical church in Pennsylvania with 20,000 or so weekly attendees, to small churches or much smaller churches like a Berean Bible in Spokane, and which is closer to the 200 person weekly attendees. So we've developed a model that can be used in churches of almost any size.
So they can a church who's interested in working on the marriages in their particular church or their neighborhood, it doesn't necessarily have to be an entire citywide movement to connect with you guys. They could, and if they're not in one of those cities, you just want them to reach out and get connected with you.
That's right. We took the model and have created both a replicable citywide model that philanthropists can sponsor, and also a model that if you're a city leader and you've got a coalition of pastors already, we can also work with you on providing our lessons learned into the city and a model there. And then we also just started having individual pastors say, hey, I don't have a coalition and I don't know if I'd be able to build that, but I'd love you guys to help us out. And so then we also have that individual church model where we work with and consult directly with an individual church. And we have a great ministry team of consultants with more than 20 years of real practical ministry experience, and then real training on our data-informed approach to help churches apply these cool, real cutting-edge technologies, and then also cutting-edge ministry strategies to renew relationship health.
Well, I would encourage people to check out your website, communio.org. It's COMMUNIO, communio.org, because there's also all kinds of resources. I mean, you guys have date night suggestions, and you have a whole digital toolbox where people can do things where they can learn more about how to engage with this movement. And so for those of you listening, and maybe you're not a pastor or a leader of a church, but you're looking for some hope this week that, man, people can work together and solve problems and big problems. I hope this just gives you that little spark of hope that that there are these kinds of people out there who are leading in this kingdom kind of way, and there's these stories. And the more we can tell these stories, the more we can bring hope and encourage people that we can solve some of these bigger problems, but it's definitely going to take working together. We can't do it alone. So JP, thank you for your work. Thanks for leading so well in this space, for giving everybody an imagination that we can reverse divorce rates, that we can strengthen marriages, that we can train 58,000 people on how to have a good and a healthy marriage in a particular location. And so I'm just really grateful for you and how you're leading.
Oh, thank you so much, Gabe. Thanks so much for having me and for all you're doing through Q Ideas.
Yeah, well, thank you, JP.